seems to have taken us live.
I was hoping it would.
You never know. You never
Yeah,
can tell.
that's true.
Let me make sure that I've got a willingness to proceed here.
Just a general willingness. Is it there? Are you in there?
Who knows? All right. Yeah, we'll just go for the quick live. We can do it. Let's roll.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
In a world where Totem Talks is coming to you from the bottom of a garbage can.
It's
Hey,
a
Nick, how you
big
doing?
ass garbage can.
Or we were very tiny.
That's possible. Although, where'd you get all the depth in your voice? If you're, never mind. We're moving
Don't
past
question
it.
it. Don't
We're moving
question it.
past it.
Okay. Yeah, I have no memory of songs that happened this week. There's no
Oh,
way.
that's fair. I mean, there's one. I knew of the 6 albums we listened to, I knew one song. I'm sure we both knew the same one.
Yeah, but I didn't feel like singing because I couldn't remember it in the moment.
Sure.
And there was never a chance of another one happening. So,
No.
hello. You probably didn't get that intro because I probably had to edit it out because it probably peaked a bunch.
Oh,
But
definitely.
what happened was rah, 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 and then we started the episode. So I'm Pat. This is Nick.
I am.
Welcome to Totem Talks. We got
Oh,
season
man.
6, episode at 24 for you. The penultimate.
That's right. Our
We
penultimate
are-
episode. I've got my special pen, my burn book pen on
Yeah,
hand.
actually holding up. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah.
Actually holding up a pen from the film Mean Girls, not a sponsor.
And we're recording this on the week of Mean Girls Day. Mean Girls Day
That
was
is
just
true.
2 days ago. So
That's true.
hope
And
everyone
you know what?
celebrated.
Everyone should have celebrated. You have to wear pink, even though
It wasn't on a Wednesday.
it wasn't on a Wednesday.
It was not. Very upsetting.
That's a shame. And you know what's even worse, Nick? If I'm not mistaken, is next year not a leap year, which means it will never be on a Thursday.
Or never on a Wednesday? Really?
Never
wait,
on a Wednesday.
Oh, shoot. I was thinking the
2024.
next... Yeah, you're right. That's really going to mess with things.
I'm sorry. I just thought of it, and I felt like you needed a full year to come to terms.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, this will be my last episode, so let's
right
enjoy
before
it.
the finale of the season. That's fair. That's
Which
fair.
we've
I mean,
already done all the listening for at this point. Which
if
is fine.
there's that's true. Which is really the fun part. I mean, listening to the songs, right? I love talking about them, but
yeah,
most of the time the fun part's listening.
True. But anyway,
you know what? Here's what I'm going to say. Like I mentioned before, we're starting to wrap up the season here. We have one more episode left. After the season, there's some standard stuff that happens.
Yes.
So we're going to do our awards show where we just kind of talk about how the season went. We'll mention a little bit of things. We'll mention our, biggest surprises, our disappointments, who we think is like going to continue their career the best as we go through the best and worst of each category. And finally, we'll announce the overall winner of the season score-wise. So it's a lot of fun stuff we're going to do. And it's just a chance to kick back and chill for a bit.
Of course.
We're also going to do our best of the rest, which means artists we covered this season, albums we did not cover this season. So which artists didn't get their maybe best work to us or a work that we still wanted to showcase. And then we'll rank them as we go and see who had the best of the rest.
It's going to be rough. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, we picked our albums already. We drafted them, and
it's going to be like the line between the top album on that list and the bottom album is going to be like very thin.
Which is good. I mean, that's a sign of a strong season, which I think altogether it's been a really good season, and I'm excited to see that in data form.
On a strong note as well.
That's true. That's true. And then I'll tell you, I'll let you talk about it for a minute now before we get rolling, and then we'll talk about it again at the end. we're going to be doing something a little interesting. So last season, in between 4 and 5 or 5 and 6, we took a little bit of just a break.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't upload, which I mean, hopefully by this point, hopefully you're ever hearing this, and our issues with our hosting services have been eradicated. But we're going to do a little non-linear, but still kind of counting mini series.
Yes.
And our plan is to kind of get one of these going in between each season for at least a while. We'll see if we keep it. I think it sounds fun.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it's enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, we're going to be doing mini seasons. So from here on out until everyone hates it or we don't like it, I don't really foresee that being a problem. But we're going to do season and a halves. So after the regular stuff for season 6 this year, you'll get season 6 and a half. And each half season will consist of 4 episodes. And not only will the matchups obviously have some relation to each other, but all 4 matchups will be related in some way. So we're going to pick 8 artists and kind of pit them against each other 2 at a time in this mini version of the season. The scores still count, like it'll be official TotemTalks canon, what happens in those episodes. But it just gives us a chance to take like a larger view at a specific skill set or style or something like that.
Yeah, exactly that. And we'll talk more about specifically season 6 and a half. More maybe at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I think definitely I'll give away what it's going to be at the end of next episode, because I think some of the themes of the finale and the themes of season 6 and a half will coincide.
Sure. I wonder why you think that.
Yeah, who knows?
But you know what? Enough.
Yeah, seriously.
It is time. Oh. It is time. And here's what I'll say. Let me find a gavel here. I know I normally let you announce these things.
No, go ahead.
But I, as the bailiff, pretend I'm a bailiff, am calling in the honorable judges, Patrick O'Leary and Nicholas McLaughlin. It's the trial of Patti Smyth versus Patti Smyth.
That's right. Can you add in like the Law and Order? Dun dun.
If I remember to, I'm sure I can.
Okay.
That was my intention.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see if it happens. But if not, this part stays in.
Yeah.
So they'll know that I tried.
Exactly.
So yeah, we have the Patti Smyth v. Patti Smith.
Eyes versus Wise.
Yep. It's exactly pretty much. It is an interesting battle, to say the least.
And to make it clear up front, when we're talking about Patti with Eyes, we are including the albums under Patti Smith Group as part of her discography.
That is correct.
Will be combined.
Yeah. And for other Patti Smith with the Wise, we will not do that.
Wouldn't make sense.
So
Patti
here's
Smith
the thing.
With Eyes. Talk about her.
I'm going to bring us into Patti Smith.
Well, they both have eyes. I mean the letter I in Patti and Smith. I just want to make that clear. I don't want anyone thinking like one of their eyes has been gouged out.
That is true. That would be a very horrific way to refer to them.
It truly would. Definitively a low light.
Great point. Anyway,
okay, talk.
Patricia Lee Smith is an American singer, songwriter, poet, painter, and author. So quite an accomplished career for Miss Smith. And she has been active from 1967 all the way to the present day. We covered 3 albums. We started with Horses, which was released in 1975. We followed that up with Easter from 1977. And then we closed it out with Banger from 2012. And I had Patti Smith.
You did.
So I will start talking about Horses.
Stay focused.
I know. I'm not going to start talking about actual horses, although I could. Here's the thing. This is like a garage rock version of punk rock is the best thing I can get from it.
With lots of piano.
With lots of piano. Patti Smith in this album, I'm going to come right out and say it, not a great singer. I mean, whether or not she gets better or worse, we'll discuss. Not the best. And you know what's actually hilarious, Nick?
Go on.
There was a part, I believe, on this album, if not this one, definitely the second album, where she does like a small spoken word, not rap,
Sure,
but
but
not rap,
mm-hmm.
which is a weird phrase. But she did that in her speaking voice and went back into her singing voice. And the exact change between speaking and singing voice reminded me very, very like fully of one artist. And so when I say this comparison, I don't know how you're going to take it.
Okay.
Patti Smith sounds like the female Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
In terms of like that specific affectation in her voice where like when he gets going and he's up here and he's up in the nasally, it's like a little nasally, but a little like pushed out of the chest at the same time.
Yeah.
That sound, that's the same difference in Patti Smith's voice. You're getting like an affectation up into the nasal where it sounds like, it almost sounds like you're trying to do like a nasally, deeper Elvis voice, but in rock and roll. It's the best way I can describe
I think I
it.
described it a little differently, but I'll get to that.
Sure. Song wise, I'm going to be honest with you, man. They were rather forgettable for the most part. The lyrics, I'll be honest again. I don't know why I keep saying I'll be honest.
Just lie to us.
But I was really expecting more because the one thing I knew about Patti Smith was that she was a phenomenal writer. And so I was confused that the lyrics did not feel that depth that I was expecting. So I was surprised, to say the least. I didn't hate it. I know it's coming across like I absolutely hated it. I didn't, but I can't say that I loved it. It's climbing an uphill battle for me from the beginning. The one kind of redeeming quality was that I thought the writing would be stronger than it was. So punk rock, I'm already a little iffy on, just personally, for the most part. And then the one part that I was hoping was better wasn't.
Okay.
So like maybe like a C for me.
Sure.
Even though the critics love it.
Right. So that's what I was going to get to. I mean, we shouldn't dance around the fact while we're talking about this record. It is considered one of the best records ever made.
Yeah.
It was 44th on Rolling Stone's list of the greatest albums of all time, but on the most updated version, it's actually all the way up to 26th. It was 12th on NME's list. It's in the Library of Congress. It's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. Widely considered one of the most fantastic and influential works ever in the history of music.
Absolutely.
So it does feel really unique. What I want to say about this album is musically, she's doing something that is almost a contradiction in and of itself, which is like trying to combine punk music with like art rock writing. Like it's a very unique approach to songwriting that she has.
Yeah.
So it's like art rock with, it's like if Radiohead tried to do punk and then like put it, you know what I mean? Like it's that art rock style. But I really, really wanted to like this album because of how much I knew about it coming in. Just in terms of the accolades, it was one of those records where as soon as we started the podcast, I kind of put it aside. Like, I know I was going to eventually listen to this. Now I'm just going to wait. I like the idea of the album way more than I liked the regular album. I tolerated the music, but I liked what was trying to be done.
Right.
But just like the actual product itself was like, I will tolerate this. It is fine.
Yeah.
The problem is that the word I wrote in my notes was she like intentionally uglifies her voice. She like, I think she has actually a nice singing voice that she like just ratchets it over the top to make it sound way worse than it would be if she just sang instead of tried to like shout sing.
Now, just for the sake of the audience to understand where my theory was coming from, Nick, how do you feel about Bruce Springsteen's voice?
I hate it.
Right.
I hate it.
I just want to be clear that
Mhm.
Nick, in fact, was agreeing with me
Oh yeah.
that her voice has that affectation that he hates on Bruce Springsteen, which is
Mhm.
why as soon as he
Yeah,
started
it's
talking,
like
I was like, oh yeah, he
it's
agrees with me.
it's like here's what I'll say. Her voice is like being in a fist fight with a toddler. Okay? The
Okay.
amount of voice that you need to use to knock over the toddler, you could just push him down gently and not hurt him.
Yeah.
She puts so much "Argh!" into it. It's like she is full blown punching this kid in the nose as hard as she possibly can and maybe even killing him. Like that much effort put into where it was just not needed. It's like
Right.
overexerted 10 times what it needed
Sure.
to be.
Uh, I
I don't
guess
know
I'll just
where
go
that
out.
metaphor came from.
No, I'll just go out on a limb here and I'll just say, we here at Totem Talks make no allegations to either Patti Smith punching
Oh, of
children,
course not.
especially not strictly with their voice.
Right, but if she was to do it, she would do it way too hard.
Hypothetically,
Theoretically, yeah. All right,
theoretically,
so
all up here.
Easter. This is one of those records that's under the Patti Smith group. This is the record that if you are a casual music fan or a super intense music fan who's never listened to Patti Smith like me, it has the one song you're going to know, which is Because the Night, which is an excellent song. And
Who helped write that song?
Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, just had to put it out there.
Yeah.
It's all my theory is really tying in is what I need people to
Of course.
understand.
Yes. It's her best work, I think. It it's funny because I always thought back on that song and I'm like, oh yeah, in my head I was like, oh, Patti Smith can definitely sing. And I think she can, like I said before, but the vocal performance was sloppier than I remembered from just having this song in my memory or hearing it on the radio sometimes.
Sure.
Once I started listening for that sloppy performance, I heard it a lot more. And this album, I think it is an improvement for me because it felt like it was going more into the art rock writing and a little less invested in punk here. I think the fact that she's playing with a band tempers some of her less pleasant to listen to songwriting urges. So overall, you get an album that is just fine. And I think it may even benefit if I re-listen to it a few times. I might start to like it a little bit more. But I like it more than Horses, and I won't really go out of my way to listen to it though.
Sure. And very important to note that this album was not quite received as well as Horses. Still very popular throughout, but some of the
Very well.
criticisms were almost exactly what you said. Like,
Mhm.
if you love Horses for her getting all weird and wacky and the
Yeah.
more avant art versions of the punk,
Mhm.
you're going to be disappointed because they don't really happen here. However, if like us, you did not love Horses
Right.
and thought at best it was in the C range, you will like this album probably more because it fits further away from that style,
Mhm.
which is, I think, is a step in the right direction, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, and you know what?
yeah,
I didn't really pull this. You know who produced and mixed this record?
I don't.
Jimmy Iovine, who just a couple weeks ago
Who-
destroyed the career of Toadies.
No, who we were talking, who we have Jimmy, I know you're here again. Hello. We would love to talk about any opportunities you may have.
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Want to be clear. But yes, things happen with Jimmy Iovine. But he produced this album, which was better than the last one.
You're right.
So, what do you like or not like about it? I think her voice has gotten stronger.
Mhm.
As you kind of mentioned, there are still some holes in the vocals here, but from the first album to the second album, it's cleaner. It's still sloppy, but it's cleaner, and I'll take that. And also, I think in this one, it was more obvious to me that Patti Smith was almost exclusively a lyricist here.
Okay, yeah.
It just the difference in this in the writers of the songs versus I can hear the difference in the music very clearly. And I'm like, that usually to me means she's contributing lyrics which were stronger again than that first one. And this is what I was expecting more from Patti Smith.
Right.
Stronger lyrics that evoke some kind of emotion. And from my limited knowledge of her, spoke to like activism and or freedoms and things like
Sure.
that, which these hit that throughout. I'm still not loving the whole album as a whole, but it's a step in the right direction for me.
Banger.
So I'll take us into Banger, which is a terrifying title to read for a Patti Smith album that came out in 2010s, because it came out in 2012 and I was terrified. I was like, okay. And here's the thing, we get through it and I think two things are true. Almost by force of not being able to exert herself because she's an older woman now, I guess, this is her best sounding album by far vocally, because she just has to sing on it.
Right.
She can't do the crazy stuff that she like the yelling or the affected voice. Right. So she just sings for most of it. There are still some weird parts, but purely vocals, it's her strongest album, I think, that we listened to. You're getting writing that is a clearly accomplished writer writing personal experiences well. Lyrics even stronger here again. And the music is super forgettable. And that is kind of where it boils down to me. If I was reading this as like a book of poetry, I think I would like it more. And I don't read a lot of poetry, but I think the music doesn't make it bad. Sure. But it's sad because the album closes with a cover of Neil Young's After the Gold Rush, and the quality difference in the instrumentation is evident. Like the writing of the instrumentation, is evident.
She also changed some of the lyrics to update it, modernized it a bit. So what's interesting about this record right off the bat is it was released on the anniversary of Horses coming out, and it was recorded in the same studio that she recorded Horses in. But strangely enough, it's definitely the most straightforward rock of all of her records. It's definitely like the easiest entry level. It's like the one that you can enjoy right away as a listener without like thinking about it and then trying to unpack the songs. Her voice holds up very well, like you mentioned. I guess my thing with this record is sort of what you said, like the individual songs don't necessarily like inspire re-listens.
Right.
There was nothing that necessarily like caught your ear and made you go like, oh, I really want to hear that again. But as an album experience, like as sitting through it from beginning to end and hearing where an artist was in a certain time, almost like going to a show and seeing it as a one-time performance, I think it's a little bit more captivating than it is as individual songs for re-listen, if that makes sense.
I get it. I fully do.
Yeah, I'd rather like experience the whole record again than go back and like throw songs on a playlist.
Yes, and it's worth mentioning again, this is an album that was received to general critical acclaim. You're looking at 7 out of 10 up. The lowest score that I'm seeing is a 7 out of 10 from Drowned in Sound.
Right.
But all the major things, Metacritic has it up in the 80s, 4 stars, 4.5 stars, all that good stuff. It was well received. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, of course. And now you can talk about Patti Smith.
Yeah, I'll give some Patti Smith facts. So I was worried here because I didn't know much about Patti Smith going into this. This is obviously somebody whose career is not in my line of sight. You know what I mean? So I wasn't sure how much I was going to get. And I mean, I got some. I didn't get a ton. I got some good stuff. So for Patti Smith's unique factor, I was struggling to think like what's going to be the unique point of Patti Smith. And what I landed on was Patti Smith has experimented with multiple religions throughout her life.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a time when she was interested in Buddhism. She's had a very good working relationship, at least with Pope Francis,
Mm-hmm.
playing there multiple times, and but has also like advocated and spoken out against organized religion.
Right.
But the interesting fact that I wanted to give, because I don't know if we've ever had another one, and if we have, it's never come up. She was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if we have. That's a good
Right.
question.
So that's a unique fact. Whether, obviously she has not stayed a Jehovah's Witness and has
Correct.
experimented and moved around and I think landed absent of a religion,
Mm-hmm.
at least it's recently.
Yeah.
An interesting little unique tidbit. Her highlight, you could argue it's horses because of how well it was received. But if you're one of the few artists that gets inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I would consider that career highlight.
I think that's fair.
I think that's a pretty safe bet. You could also argue the Grammy Hall of Fame for horses
Sure. Yeah.
could also be up there. An acclaimed career for Patti Smith.
Oh, definitely.
So I guess her career low light would be the reason she really got back into performing. So Patti Smith took a pretty extended break in the 80s. Ironically, almost around the time when other Patti Smith.
Yeah, well, you can only operate one at a time.
Right. It's just ironic. During that time, she settled down. She was married. She was married to Fred Smith, who was a musician, a fellow musician.
I was hoping you were going to say professional tennis player.
No, unfortunately, I don't. I could not find anything of him playing tennis.
Okay, fair enough.
But they settled down for it was a bunch of years there in the 80s. And then in 1994, Fred unfortunately passed away. He died of a heart attack. And the writing after his death prompted Patti Smith to come out of really come out of retirement and start like writing and recording and touring again. So
Sure.
Dealing with that loss, but you got to give that a low light. I mean, she obviously was very upset about the whole situation, and very unfortunate for her. So the nicest, we'll go nicest then meanest. So Patti Smith, as I had alluded to before, is very well known for her activism. She is very outspoken. She's a big proponent of like protest songs and things such as those. Like she's not genre wise, but like folk. She's like a folk hero singer person in her activism beliefs. So you could all go all the way back to like she used to sing and publicly support Ralph Nader in the presidential elections. Yeah. And she's always been very outspoken about her political beliefs. She was a speaker and singer at the protests against the Iraqi war. She supported John Kerry, things like that. So she's been a very political active person in terms of her nice things. Like I always believe like if you're going to like fight for what you believe in,
sure.
That's, that's the thing. She's also appeared on like anti-war concerts and benefits. Most recently, she performed on the day that the Russian invasion of the Ukraine happened, and had like a big speech about that. She'd say I would be lying if I said I wasn't affected. She's talking about how it's a big thing, and then sang an English translation of the Ukrainian anthem.
Oh, okay.
So that's I think a pretty nice thing. She's very outspoken about those issues and her beliefs and supports and things like that. And I always value that.
Of course.
Meanest thing she did. And this was a stretch, I guess, really. Because when I read the first sentence, you're like, oh, yeah. But she had a rather lengthy affair with Sam Shepard, who was an accomplished playwright and author. Right around 1970, for 1970 till probably around 1974, when him and his family moved to London, into the UK.
Okay.
And the reason, so like it was a very publicized affair. They got like matching tattoos. They would hang out all the time. It was very public. But apparently, according to Patti Smith in her memoir, throughout the entire time, like his wife and Patti were like good friends throughout it. Like they would hang out and be friendly, and the three of them would hang out. And so I'm almost like, was this just polyamory?
Yeah, who knows?
And
But it wasn't socially acceptable, so no one
it was, yeah, right. Like in
wanted
the
to say it out
70s, so
loud.
you can't say it. So it was just an
Okay.
affair. I don't know. I mean, if it was just an affair, whether or not whatever else was happening, like that could be considered pretty effing mean.
Yeah, definitely.
The fact that the wife wasn't offended apparently by it
Yeah.
is
Makes
up
you
for debate.
wonder.
Makes you wonder, but that's also Patti Smith's side of the story from her memoir.
Sure.
So we don't know. So it's going in her meanest category.
Yes.
And then we got our 6 degrees, and
Of
I have
course.
2 as I try to, more than one comes up every once in a while. So the first one is she signed to Arista Records for horses, and her first album was produced by John Cale, who was
okay.
the co-founder of the
Underground.
Velvet Underground. So that's a little 6 degrees.
Nice.
And then the other 6 degrees I found was the song Suddenly I See by KT Tunstall
Yes.
is a tribute to Patti Smith.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay, cool.
And that is what I have.
Then it is time to go to Patti Smith. Not until after I pee, though.
Of course not. Of course not. Wouldn't dream of it. Yes, Keith, it is Glasses Pat today. Just the blue lights because I've been staring at the screen for a long time and my eyes are hurting and my head's hurting. So, we'll see how much the blue lights actually help. I feel like they don't always help during the day because during the day I have my window open, so I don't have my lights on. And I feel like for some reason, even though the window's over here, like this area still feels dark. But I also don't want to waste the electricity because I'm here all day. It's a real pickle I'm in. Oh, man. Patti Smith to Patti Smith. What a day. I hope everybody out there is having a great day as well. And, just if you stumbled upon this on I guess YouTube, because right now only one person's watching live, but if you stumble on the YouTubes. Oh, I was just chatting with
okay.
With our beloved fans.
Yes.
All right. Good old Patti Smith.
You gotta love it.
Could you also? I mean, you didn't find like how you didn't just find her first album.
Oh yeah, I did. On the YouTube.
Okay, but was yeah. I'm curious if it was the same one I found.
Probably. I didn't have a hard time on YouTube.
Well, I'll explain.
Okay.
It's hard to it's hard to articulate, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
3, 2, 1.
Patricia Smith, who was born on my birthday in 1957,
and you're Patrick,
is an American singer and songwriter, and I'm Patrick, but not Smith.
Right.
She has been active from 1981 until the present day. We covered 3 albums. We started with 1987's Never Enough. We followed that up with 1992's Patti Smith. And then we closed it out with 2020's It's About Time.
Yes.
And Nick, you get to take us into the land of Never Enough.
I would love to. So a little background to understand this record. Patti Smith was already successful coming into the solo career as the lead singer of the band Scandal, I want to say.
Scandal.
Yeah, okay. Scandal. So you would there's one song like The Warrior that's pretty big by then that I'm not as familiar with, but Goodbye to You is the one that I actually did know when I was looking at Scandal. But anyway, so she's like attempting to launch a solo career because Scandal, things were not going particularly well with the group and they were breaking up, so she needed to do her own thing. And this is now where she doesn't really get credited for writing much, I will say. I mean, like, it just seems like
It's true.
she was the voice for the record company to put out what they were doing. But it's certainly not a bad record. I mean, I think as far as listening, it's very solid song by song. It's definitely characteristic of when it came out. Like, it's an album that dates itself. And here's my gripe with this record. I'll give it one negative and then one positive to end it on. My gripe with this record
Okay.
is as far as the style of music goes, I mean, keep in mind, Scandal's doing their thing in the early 80s. This doesn't come out until 1987. And it's basically what Pat Benatar had already been doing really successfully for 8 years. Like, there was no trying to come up with her own voice on top of that or something like, it just felt like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to try to just maybe make a Pat Benatar record. That was the vibe I picked up. But here's the thing. She's super talented as a vocalist. She's like a very good singer.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, listen. I'll tell you, two things are true about her vocals on this album. She is an incredible singer, very, very good voice, and she is over singing the hell out of this album.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, like that, I mean, there is such a thing as too much.
I think
Every song can't be an 11.
correct.
It can't. It just can't. You gotta calm down for a couple. So that was a little much. Yeah, and other than that, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's so basic. I wrote that it came about 3 years too late.
Yeah,
That's what it felt like.
I
to
agree.
me. It just felt like it was, and I'll tell you what, it makes sense when we go into to Patti Smith, which I'll go into in a minute. But it definitely felt like it was just a little behind the times. Like she's playing catch up, and it makes sense when because she kind of came out and said that this album wasn't originally supposed to be her debut album.
Oh, interesting.
Like it was this, most of these songs were written in beginnings as Scandal songs.
Oh, okay.
So when her and I think Zach was the guy who they did not get along. They ended their partnership, and her and one of the other guys were still together, and they decided to make it a Patti Smith solo album. They brought in other people to kind of mix it around a little bit, and I think that's where you lose the voice.
Okay.
A bit, because obviously she couldn't just release an album that sounded like Scandal.
Sure.
That was the whole point.
Mhm.
So it kind of suffered a little bit because of that. Moving on, I guess. Oh, before we move on. So what I was going to say was that if we found the same version of it, the only version of Never Enough that I could find is I search everything in YouTube Music, not a sponsor. And if it's on YouTube or on an album, I'll be able to find it and listen to it through that. The only like one that showed up was just not, it was a picture. The picture was the thumbnail of the album.
Right.
But the title was just the emoji of a girl.
Oh,
there
and then
was
the description said Patty's Never Enough.
And I was just I was like, it's fascinated that it even showed up as the first listing.
You're right.
It was just an emoji of a girl. And I was like, all right, I'll click and see what happens. Yeah. And it was the full album. So moving on to Patti Smith. I have a very similar note. This album is about 3 years behind the times. So this came out in 92. This was an album from 1989, 100%. It felt like the very late 80s. By like the very end of it, I could feel the 90s creeping in.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're in the 90s at the time. And she sounds great. I mean, she sounds great. She's a very talented vocalist. And, you know, the more that I hear of Patti Smith singing, the more I think like, oh, she's getting Whitney Houston, right? Like
Mm.
Whitney Houston in the 80s was an incredible vocalist who the songs written for her were a little corny.
Yeah.
Some of them became like really, really great nostalgic hits
Mm-hmm.
for like forever that will be remembered. And of course, there's always I Will Always Love You, which is
Right.
different than the rest. But she has that similar thing of like, she's a great vocalist. I'm not going to call her Whitney Houston, but she's a great vocalist
Yeah.
whose the writings that are being given to her. I mean, she's credited on a lot of these, but
Mm.
I can assume they're lyrics and
Sure.
not, you know, I can assume that. Yeah, that's about it. I mean,
Okay.
it's all right.
Yeah. I think it's better than the first one. Um, but it is very similar. Maybe
Yeah.
I just liked it more than the first one because the overall vibe was a little bit softer.
Well, there was one really good song on here for sure, which I was going to let you
Yeah, I
talk
assume
about.
you're talking about the gold single here, which was "Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough," which was a duet with Don Henley,
Right.
which was her big hit from this record.
Yes. Yes,
I've
it
never
was.
heard it before, um, but it was a gold single. It clearly has not held up in the zeitgeist, but not because it's a bad song.
No, just
I mean,
didn't hold water.
yeah, it's interesting that Sheryl Crow is also on this album as a backing vocalist. Um,
Yeah.
that's interesting. But like you said, it's just like it's an album that feels like a little bland, a little behind the times. I wouldn't intentionally revisit it, but it was pleasant enough that I wouldn't mind hearing it again if somebody else really wanted to hear it. Like her performances are very good, so the
Yeah.
songs aren't bad. They're just not invoking anything other in me other than to say like, okay. So it's about time. Her most recent record. There were two in
Yeah.
between, but one was a greatest hits and one was a Christmas album. So really, her only other studio album of original music. First thing,
Yes.
her voice sounds great. She held up really, really well.
Absolutely.
And she again has about 6 partial writing credits on this record. I think stylistically, it's a little bit softer of an album again. That regression is happening each one, but maybe this one holds up the best. A lot of them, it's the same thing I was saying. Like none of these songs are getting me excited, but every song is good. They're good. Um, I think the more acoustic approach to this record does signify growth for her as an artist. So I do like that. My biggest question mark is why did she do another cover of Downtown Train? Because she covered Downtown Train, which is a Tom Waits song, on her
Yeah.
first record, and
Yep.
then she did it again. And I'm not entirely sure why she has 2 covers of the same song in her discography. Okay.
I wish I could tell you. I unfortunately cannot.
Not
Yeah, I
bad.
mean, listen, it's not bad. You said a lot of the things that I'm thinking. It's kind of become pretty evident to me. Patti Smith is fine. She's fine. She's a good singer.
Definitely.
The voice still does hold up, as you mentioned. She's clearly someone who has a lot of talent, and her songs never really caught on.
Yeah.
I get why. I mean, the quality of the first two was fine for the time, but it doesn't have that. They lack that timeless
Mhm.
quality that helps music withstand,
Correct.
and that's fine. You get some hits for dated songs, but none of hers were them. And this most recent album is somebody who clearly hasn't fully maybe tapped their well of talent and contribution, but it's still pretty middle of the road. Strongest of the three,
Yeah.
but in comparison to like a lot of other albums I've listened to, middle of the
Right.
road.
It's
That's
interesting. I
okay.
feel like we had the same exact progression through time with both Patti Smiths.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. So let me talk about Patti Smith. I jumbled my notes up a little bit here because as I was going through, I was like, "Wait, is this a 6 degrees, or is this a unique thing, or is what's the high?" So
Sure.
it's a little jumbled, but that's all right. I'm going to start with the highlight and the low light. The highlight, I mean, the only thing I can think of for her music career is it's uh, her duet with Don Henley. I mean, it's that one big hit that she had.
Yeah.
She also did have another hit single, although I don't think this one went gold. It was called "Look What Love Has Done." It was featured in the film Junior, and she did get a Grammy and Academy Award nomination for that single. So
Okay.
I think that's pretty much the best I can come up with. As far as low light, we actually had kind of a similar one, strangely enough. She was so she felt very disenfranchised by the music industry, which is pretty common. And
Yeah.
that, like, basically, she was so upset with how things were going that she decided that she didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And so there was a long
Yeah.
hiatus where because she just couldn't stand the industry. Um, and so let's see, for 23 years she didn't release anything until her Christmas album come on December in 2015. So it's the
Wow.
first album of original music since 1992, the year of our birth. Wasn't until 2020.
Yeah.
So that's that. But here's something that's nice. The nice thing that she did is she actually recorded that Christmas album in 2015. And so with that album, all of the pre-order sales went to the charity the Headstrong Project, which is for veterans' mental health care. So
Great
you
cause,
got to love
honestly.
that. Um, and as the meanest thing, I couldn't really find anything that was really mean about her. However, we mentioned, I believe, off mic, she is married to tennis legend John McEnroe,
To John McEnroe.
who is known to be a bit of a hothead.
The
Other
bad boy of
other
tennis.
than being good at tennis, I would say the thing he is most known for is his temper. Um, and in an NPR interview that she did for her most
Oh
recent
Lord.
album release, she claims to be the hot-headed one in their marriage. So she so I'm gonna say that's the meanest thing about her, because if she is more hot-headed than John
Yeah.
McEnroe,
Oh my gosh. That can't be true though.
well, maybe
I
she
mean,
was
unless
just
they have to buy a new house every year. My
yeah,
God.
right.
The foundations would shake to
Ugh,
the core if they were both that overheated.
yeah. Okay. So here is what's unique. She's married to John McEnroe. But this happened after his first marriage fell apart, actually. Um, his ex had a heroin addiction, which was debilitating, as
Yeah.
theirs tend to be. And so he had to get out of that relationship and ended up with Patti Smith. And John McEnroe is actually also a musician. I don't know if you know this. He's actually a pretty good guitarist.
I have.
Mhm.
I have heard him.
Yes. So, uh, oh man, the 6 degrees. So I have some 6 degrees that are fine and
Uh-huh.
good. I have a 6 degrees that could almost be a low light,
Oh
depending
no.
on your perspective. I don't think she thinks of it this way, and that's the most important thing. But anyway,
Right.
so as the former singer of Scandal, there was someone else who's credited with being in that band. Now, this person has a Wikipedia credit for being in the band in the year 1983, but only for playing air guitar in a music video. That was his only contribution to this group, although
I
he's
know who you're
listed
talking
as being
about.
in it, and it's
I
John
know who you're
Bon
talking about.
Jovi.
John Bon Jovi.
Yes. Uh,
I remember that as a Quizzo question.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but that's not all. She's had multiple other musicians. So the bassist who played on her records also played with Todd Rundgren. The drummers who have played on her records have also played with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Bon Jovi, and David Johansen of New York Dolls. So that there's all that connection. Here's the 6 degrees that might also be considered the worst mistake of her career.
Okay.
So
Fun.
around the time that Scandal was breaking up, there was another band of that era that was also breaking up. And she happened to be friends with the lead guitarist of this band. And his name is Eddie Van Halen. And as soon as David Lee Roth left the group, Eddie went to Patti Smith and said, "Do you want to be the lead singer of Van Halen from now on? I am offering you the job."
Oh my God.
And Patti, she would to be fair, to keep something in mind, she was 8 months pregnant at the time. So she wasn't in a position to start going touring, and obviously she wants to be
Right.
around for the birth of her child, at least for a while before she starts working again. So she turned him down, and that's the end of that story. I mean, Eddie specifically requested her after David Lee left. She was the
Wow.
first one he went to.
Could you imagine
What a different world we would live in.
no Sammy Hagar, no Gary Cherone, maybe no resurgence of David Lee Roth.
Right, exactly. Could be Patti Smith.
Wow. That would have been fascinating
Right?
if we
I kind of want to hear the record.
I kind of want to hear the record
never
that
made
Patti
it,
Smith
but,
as the lead singer of Van Halen would have had. Because she had the voice. I mean, for sure. Arguably better than all three of the other singers of Van Halen.
But I mean, she was the strongest, I think.
No, Gary Cherone didn't do a great job.
Yeah, but I mean, the music was just bad. It's
yeah,
not like
that's true.
Sing. All right,
No, he can sing.
Yeah. Let's talk cultural impact for our artists here.
Yeah, we're grading. It's time to grade.
So, I mean, I think one Patti Smith has a definite advantage over the other Patti Smith here.
Yeah, I would agree. And
it's Patti with an I. I mean, her critical acclaim is off the charts. It has never fully translated to mainstream sales, to be clear. No. But she is definitely like a person in the zeitgeist. I mean, also definitely known for her writing. Like, she's released a lot of books. And that was Kids. I was going to say, when she released her memoir, Just Kids, that was kind of like a huge deal.
That was potentially my other thing, but I couldn't guarantee that not other people we've done haven't had the same thing where multiple books she's written have won like numerous writing awards.
Yes.
Like not just like, not just New York Times bestseller, but like awards specifically about the writing and how the quality.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think she's super well regarded critically. And she has one big hit for everybody else, and she's made an impact on the literary world as well. I have no idea how many points that gives us, honestly.
Listen, I mean, we're not super high.
Right.
I want to just say that some people who have directly talked about Patti Smith or Patti Smith's music as inspirational and as like a big part of forming them as musicians.
Sure.
So Michael Stipe has talked about Patti Smith. You also have Shirley Manson of Garbage. Said that. Obviously, Katie Tunstall.
Yes.
Said that. And then you have other people who have cited her as an inspiration. So you have Elliot Page.
Oh, okay.
An actor who commented on Patti Smith's like ability to shuck the gender norm of the music industry. Which is very interesting. So, you know, a lot of people have really come out and voiced her as an inspiration.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I mean, what are you in? She is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to be clear.
She's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so she's got some floor.
Yeah.
And there's a potential for there to be one big hit from her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like we could talk about like a 4.
You think just a 4? I mean, if
sorry, in force.
okay, because I was gonna say,
I'd be putting her at less than 5. Maybe not a lot less, but I think
yeah. I
under
mean, my
the
only struggle
slightly under the
is like she's
average.
already got 3 points for Hall of Fame, maybe a point
Yeah.
for a hit, and then all of the influence stuff in and out of music. I feel like is at least a point there.
I mean, you want to go to a 5 then?
I mean, if that's the highest you're willing to go, then yes. I
I just
wasn't
feel
much higher than
listen.
I never would have left the 5s, but I was definitely
Yeah.
probably
I feel like we start to get to a point where the cultural impact is all of the things that she's done. She's a wide span, but usually to really in culture, there's got to be a crater. There's got to be something like one big thing or a lot of little things. And I
and I
think
think she
she's
definitely hits a lot of little things more.
yeah, but I don't know if it's quite enough to hit her in that
Mhm.
same realm of other people who scored in the 5s.
Okay. Well,
Like it's close.
I'd like to at least stay there, 5.
I
That's my
think I think
compromise.
a 5 is good. Then we can go to a 5.
Okay. Now, the other Patti Smith, I don't think we're gonna have any disagreements here. I mean, she
No.
did have a gold single. I mean, it hasn't really survived 30 years. It hasn't really I mean, I would have thought I'd
Yeah,
have heard it at some
I
point in my life
wouldn't
before
she had a
this.
gold single, but I wouldn't say she had a hit.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, when I think of a hit when I think of a hit to give them the one-hit wonder full
yeah,
point, I can at least sing that song back. I've
sure.
listened to her song this week, and I can't sing it
Yeah,
back.
I can't. I mean, yeah, I'm okay going a little under 1 here. I
Yeah,
mean, I
I
think
mean,
she still has to get some of the points. A gold single's a gold single.
a gold single is a gold single, and I'd be fine giving her a .7.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think I think that's fair.
All right, good. So Patti Smith and group, with her discography, she has 11 total records, which is going to start her off with 5.8 points. And then it's a little bit more confusing. There's British gold, British silver, and Australian gold, but that's pretty much it.
Not enough
All in all,
certification.
it's probably not enough
No,
for
it's
what we're doing
it's
here.
enough to take away a little bit
A
here.
little, yeah. I mean, not a ton, because I'm sure her other records sold, just not quite to
Sure.
that level. I mean, maybe like a 5, 6.
Yeah, I think a 5.6 is fine.
And now you get to decide what you're going to do with her music.
I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna leave it alone. I think there was disappointment for the first album, but obviously it's hard to argue with the acclaim, even though I want to, just
Mhm.
because it was acclaimed so much. I really do think that for me, at least, I knew it was acclaimed, and so there was an expectation that wasn't met.
Yep.
But even if I were to take one away for that, I'd probably give one back for the last album. It was
Sure.
strong. 2/3 of it were strong. I just didn't love a lot of the instrumentation. So
Okay,
I'd
yeah.
probably give a point for that. And then the second one, take it or leave it. I was fine with it. It was an
Yeah, I'm
improvement.
leaving it. I'm leaving it
Right.
exactly as well. That's whatever. 2.5 for Patti Smith. She had 3 albums of original non-Christmas music. Um,
Sure.
some covers in there, but not enough that's going to affect it here. 1 gold record, 1 gold single. I don't know that we're counting the single as much as we count the record, so maybe she loses a little bit here.
I could see her losing a little bit, maybe a .1, because she did have half the
Mhm.
requirement here.
Yeah. So we'll leave her at 2.4.
Yeah.
What would you like to do from there?
I'm going to leave her right where she is. I'll tell you why. Her voice saves her for the first 2 albums being not that great. And the third album, I wouldn't take her leave anything from.
Yeah,
So I'm
I
leaving
think
her where
I
she is.
agree with you. I think the balance for me on these artists is I enjoyed listening to Patti with a Wise music more,
Yeah.
but I was less like interested in what was happening artistically than I was for Patti with an I.
Sure.
So the both those things just balance each other on each side, and I leave it alone again. Instrumental talent. Okay, Patti Smith with an I. Up until that last album, she really was hurting herself in terms of most of what she was doing with the vocal performances.
That's very true.
This is
Uh,
her roughest
It
category.
is. It is because here's the other thing with Patti Smith. She is primarily just the vocalist.
Mhm.
Like So unfortunately, her contributions to the music, the behind the scenes stuff with the writing, is not in this category.
Yep.
So you could
It's
argue
below
pretty
average.
low. I mean, the problem is also like they're doing interesting things musically, but sometimes what does that really become?
Yeah, I
What
don't.
does that really turn into?
Mhm.
When you
I
talk,
certainly wasn't. It was more of a product of songwriting than instrumental talent for me.
I would
What
agree.
you're saying.
Yeah, I would agree. So that's kind of what it boils down to for me. I'm probably thinking like I'd cap out in the fours. I'd cap out in the fours.
I'm gonna go with the 3.9,
I love
and
it.
we're gonna move on. Okay, now this is the total flip side. I mean, Patti Smith, primarily, she's the singer for these records. That's what she brings to the table, and she's very, very good at it.
Yeah, I mean
Like, this is the one
that's
thing where she's gonna
true.
get her points.
It's her big excelling thing.
Yeah.
I think realistically, you could argue her vocals in the sevens.
Yeah, oh, I totally agree. And that's primarily what we're gonna weight things on. I would be okay flat it like, with a flat 7.
I think that's fair.
Um,
I do think my one critique of her would be there are a lot of times when she is like over singing, and I
mhm,
know that's partially the songs themselves, but like it
yeah,
sounds forced.
for sure.
But there's a lot of talent there.
Yes, definitely. Songwriting. Okay. Patty with an I. This is what she is known for. Whether or
Yes,
not it connected with us, I think the songwriting was, for me at least, the most interesting part of finally listening to Patti Smith, just to hear
sure.
what her approach was going to be. She was definitely doing something that was totally unique to her, that was, you know, not just a ripoff, not a copy, not generic in any way. It is her strength as an artist, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And still didn't love any of the records.
I agree. I think she does well. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the strength. We'll get into that a little more, but I think it's above average, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a lot above average for me because I
Right.
think that she gets a lot of points for interesting on the first album, and as she got more normal, I
Mhm.
liked the music more and more, but I
Yeah.
don't know if that necessarily equates to more points because
Yeah.
as you're taking things away, I'm liking you more. Kind of.
Yeah. I'm trying to, before we officially give this score, find a website that has Rolling Stone's top 100 songwriters on it, just in case
Yeah.
we want to factor that in.
Well, does
I'm
that
like
not count lyricists? Like
99%
lyrics?
sure.
I would assume anything they put
I
out for
just, I,
songwriter counts
yeah.
lyrics.
Considering that I think the Bob Dylan is the greatest everything of all time, I would
Right.
have to imagine.
Which since we separate it, and I think she'll score high. I mean, for me, she's scoring higher on poetic
Yeah.
talent, which is why I'm
All right. Well, you tell me what you want here. I'll keep looking.
yeah. So I mean, I think for Patti Smith as a songwriter, I could argue her a little bit above average, like a 5.3.
Yep.
I think
Okay.
that's a good spot for her. Again, it kind of tapers as she simplifies her sound. It is more likable, but the trade-off is kind of it doesn't move the needle too much for me.
Yes. That's totally fair. So that brings us to other Patti Smith.
Yeah,
She only has um 2.5 points to start here
because
because she only has three
3
records.
records.
On those records, now we're counting the number of covers against her.
Yeah,
So again, she had 6 writing credits on the first, or on the third record, 6 on the second record, 2 on the first.
right.
That's 14 songs.
That's an album and an EP. It's worth. You
Yeah,
could even
I
put that
mean,
on one album and not have it be crazy. So,
exactly. So I think we're looking at a fairly low score here.
unfortunately for Patty with a Y, I would agree.
Yeah,
It's just how low do you want to
I
go?
mean,
The songs that she's
I
credited
guess
on.
like,
Where do you want to go?
yeah, I mean, it's the high
Yeah, I
ones.
mean, I think that's fair. I think we could give her probably like a
Yeah.
1 either a 1.7 or a 1.8. I think we could be fine with, because the
I'll do
songs
the
that she
1.8.
wrote weren't bad. None of the songs were
Right.
bad. They were a little dated, but they weren't bad.
Sure. Okay. For the record, I couldn't find a list that wasn't on Rolling Stone's website, and their website's impossible to use. It gets so glitchy.
Yes.
Um, but I found an Apple Music playlist of all the artists who are in it. I can tell you Patti Smith is somewhere on the list, probably what I can guess in like the 60s or 70s
Yeah.
in terms of greatest songwriters
Sure.
of all time.
That makes sense.
All right.
Poetic talent.
Poetic talent.
We'll talk about Patti with an I. This is her bread and butter. I know you said songwriting.
Yeah.
I know that, but this is the part of songwriting she excels at. She is a very eloquent writer. The first album, I know I talked about my disappointment based on expectation, but honestly, comparing it to like punk rock albums of the time, it's far and above in terms of the message. We'll move into Easter and Banga, and it's clear that her lyrics, as she's, moving through time, she's not much older by the time Easter comes out, but she's still writing with more maturity there. And as you get into Banga, you can see the maturity of a woman who has lived her life and is writing about it in a way where you're getting what she's putting down. You're picking up what she's putting down on the album. And that's all that as an artist you want. You want your listeners to be able to input their own emotion, but also kind of get where you're coming from. And I think she does that extremely well in her vocals. Almost like to the point where they're almost overshining the music at times in her later works. And so I'm above average.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're a resident lyrical expert, so
yeah,
I'm ready to hear where you stand.
I think for Patti Smith, the first album does take a little bit away from me, but I'm still pretty comfortably in the 6s.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
Yeah,
that's where we're gonna end up.
I would argue maybe just under a 6.5.
Sure, 6.4 it is.
Okay.
Look, Patti Smith with why it's not getting any better for you here.
No,
I mean, I'll give her the 1.7 this time because we're talking about the same number of songs.
Yeah, and here's the problem with me. Seriously, a 1.7's fine just based on the fact that it's already so low. The big issue that I have with the lyrics on this album is in the 80s, if you're writing just to the mean and you're writing basic stuff, the 80s were also already known for cheesy lyrics at the best of times. And this one is no different. I mean, cheesy, it just gets it. The lyrics get pretty corny, like, unfortunately for Patti Smith.
Yeah.
She's singing the hell out of them, but it only goes so far.
Yep. All right. Is there X Factor to talk about here?
I mean, I think you really could argue it for Patti.
I was going to say, I think you're going to have the argument more so than me. So,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely some arguments to be had. The achieved sustained success for her. There was also a moment where she was like pretty well known during a concert. She actually fell like 15 feet off the stage directly under her back and like fractured her spine during a show. And she credits like the time off that gave her with the strength of Easter, like because she was forced to not tour.
Okay.
Like she just was able to have more time to write and wrote what she felt was a stronger album.
Right.
But mostly the fall would be that. You also, I mean, like I've mentioned, her being very, very active in the political scene, in terms of like singing about and publicly going out against the Russian invasion, being known as a feminist icon. She also stirred up some controversy though about being a feminist icon because she declines to call herself a feminist, saying that she has both a son and a daughter. People always say that I'm a feminist, but I have a son. I'm into human rights. She's a human rights activist, which, she's not anti-feminist.
Right.
But it's very interesting because she is very well known as a feminist icon to feminists.
Right.
And she has publicly come out and been like, I want everybody to have rights.
Well, that's just a semantic difference. It's not
of course,
a philosophical one.
Right. Of course. It's just interesting. But again, I mean, if we didn't give her anything because of all the stuff we gave her for cultural impact, I'd be fine. There's enough there that we could give her maybe half a point up to.
You got it. Half a point it is. I've got final scores. I'll tell you this: the X Factor wasn't going to make a difference.
I had a feeling.
So, final scores for today. Winning this week is Patti Smyth.
Wow.
As we knew
We did
she
it.
would.
We did it.
Okay. To be clear, Patti with I, Smyth with I.
Yes.
With a 26.7. And Patti with Y's scored 13.6.
Half the score.
So it was a little bit of a blowout this week.
She scored half.
She did. Put up a good fight.
You know what? Honestly, I'll tell you what. Patti with a Y, a better showing than I expected.
Oh, yeah.
Before I listened to you.
Until we knew anything about her.
Right. Like you are a very talented singer. I'm sorry that your career didn't hit the way it could have.
Well, come back next week because our season finale is going to pit two pillars of classic rock up against each other.
That's true. That is true. It is quite the finale. It's been quite the season.
It has.
For anybody who is new to Totem Talks this season, this is our first season doing a head-to-head matchup.
That's right.
We've been previously doing 3 artists at a time. And hopefully you guys like the new format, the new head-to-head of it all.
We do.
We definitely do. It's a lot more fun for us to get to do. We get a little bit more in-depth in the notes, and we can talk about the artist a little bit more. We don't feel like we are rushing through anything, which is great. But hopefully you guys feel the same way. We'd love to hear some feedback. If y'all could just hit us up on social media. We have a Totem Talks. You can hit us up on Instagram. We can find us there. You can just comment on Apple Podcasts, all that fun stuff. If you're gonna do that though, just be kind. Those
you're not allowed to say mean things about us.
Yeah, you're not allowed to. If you just please lie if you don't like us.
That's right.
That's what's important. It's important to pump up the positivity.
Mm-hmm. And more importantly,
you want me to say it now?
Important to do.
You want me to say it now? I can say it now.
What's
I was going to give us a chance to talk about the.
No.
I was going to. Okay.
That's what next episode's for.
Have a great day. Patti versus Patti.
Well, it went the way everyone thought it would go.
I mean, of course. But I mean, honestly, Patti Smyth. Great showing for the gal.
Yeah,
she did wonderfully.
I mean, overall,
also I did.
Patti Smyth scored like over 40 points.
Patti Smyth might win the season. Then the Patti Smyth episode. I mean, hey, I do in fact have plans tomorrow.
Okay.
So yeah, they're already booked.
All right, I'll let them know.
Yeah.
All right, crazy thought.
I'm down to do another one, but
crazy
with
thought.
them. I mean, that's chill spot. Yeah.
Do you want to just do the finale now? You can totally say no. I'm throwing it out there as a spur of the moment thing since we were going to do it tomorrow anyway, and we're here and it's only 6:30.
You're right. I'm not ready. I'm like ready, but I'm not ready. Yeah. I want to be a little more in my own brain when we talk about those two. Like this one, I knew we were kind of having fun with, but that one's I want to take a little more like zone up. A wild claim. All right.
Just running in my little bike.
Hey, I got you.
I feel like
you got to do what you got to do.
Long.
These definitely helped. My head doesn't hurt as bad. I love it. I absolutely love it.
That worked though.
Are you bringing the new guitar on Saturday?
I think so. I think it will be appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. Man.
All right. Well, should we? What are we gonna do after tomorrow? Thursday? Should we prepare for which one? I'm okay with either. I mean, I have the time to listen to the tune to the records. Next week is my in-person week, so I'll be in the office. I will have nothing else to do but to listen to music while I work.
Okay.
So pretty much
Well, we
anytime
can do
after
best of the rest
9,
then.
I'm like,
yeah, we can do best of the rest.
all right,
because I have to like really sit down with the data and like map it out
sure.
for the awards. So we'll do best of the rest next week.
Excellent.
And then the awards, and that should give me enough time to get it all done.
All right.
Cool. And then we'll figure out exactly exactly what we need to listen to for the in-betweener.
Right.
The in-betweezin.
I mean, I'm going to take Corey for episode 150A.
I'll take Topanga then.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fair.
Obvious. I mean, like, for all of the other episodes, I'm not super particular about who I want.
Yeah.
But for the first episode, that's the one where
I won't fault you. I will not fault you.
I want my guy.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's roll then.
All right.
Let's end this puppy.
Oh Jesus! I didn't know you were gonna kill a dog.
And I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early.
Sounds good.
All right. Adios. All right, peeps. I'm out of here. Goodbye.